everyone, welcome back to Let's Talk. My name is John, and today here on the channel, we are going to be talking about 1994's Natural Born Killers and its brand new 4K Blu-ray that just came out from Shout Factory. So Natural Born Killers was originally released back in 1994. It's directed by Oliver Stone, who many people might know from films like Platoon or JFK. He also co-wrote the screenplay for this film, but the original screenplay was actually done by Quentin Tarantino, who ended up selling it off for $10,000, and eventually the rights to the film ended up in Warner Brothers' hands. They hired Oliver Stone and was looking to direct a movie like this. He was influenced by how the world was becoming more desensitized to the media at the time. This is during the time of the Rodney King beatings by the LAPD, which eventually resulted in the riots in Los Angeles in 1992, the O.J. Simpson murder trial. So the world was just becoming more and more influenced by the media. You know, this is the 24-hour news cycle, CNN. So the world was just becoming more and more involved with the media, and we were becoming more and more desensitized to murder, and especially around the time of Jeffrey Dahmer, we were really putting serial killers and just killers in general on the mantle and not really understanding that there were victims to these people's crimes. If only they knew in 2023 we were taking that to the next level with networks like Netflix and Hulu just having so many true crime documentaries, docu-series exploring all of these serial killers. True crime podcasts are the #1 podcasts in the world. So really it all got started back here in the early 90s when we just started to get more and more obsessed with the media and more obsessed with these killers, and that's what Oliver Stone wanted to explore with this film. And it really took the original idea that Quentin Tarantino had and just really changed the entire thing. Quentin Tarantino has completely disowned this film. He said this is not the film he would have made. He said if you enjoy his work, you are going to hate this movie. Well, Quentin Tarantino is my favorite director of all time, and I still really do enjoy Natural Born Killers. Do I love Natural Born Killers? No, and I'll explain why. Natural Born Killers has a great message in the movie. I do like that we're exploring these individuals. Mickey played by Woody Harrelson, Mallory played by Juliette Lewis. Taking what we know about those actors, you know, Woody Harrelson at the time, he's probably still most known for Cheers, being that lighthearted comedy guy. Juliette Lewis, yes, she was in Cape Fear, but she's always been like this innocent girl, you know, especially in movies like Christmas Vacation to this point, and turning them into serial killers, and I mean they're wiping people out. 52 murders by the time they eventually get caught in this movie, which is the entire second half of this film is in the prison after they finally get caught. The whole first half of the movie is exploring their relationship, what eventually led them down this path, you know, exploring their home lives. That's where we get this great sequence featuring Rodney Dangerfield playing the father to Mallory, and they've set that in a sitcom setting. So we get the laugh track and everything, but it is not funny, and you never see Rodney Dangerfield play a character like this. You hate him. You know, he's wearing the wife beater. He's just a terrible, terrible father and husband. He physically abuses and sexually abuses his wife and his daughter, played by Juliette Lewis, and it's just absolutely disgusting. And then mixing in the laugh track, it just shows how human beings can be just manipulated by what we see on TV. We just assume that every household is this warm and fuzzy, loving family that we see on TVs and like sitcoms, especially at the time, like The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, you know, Full House. Like that's really what families are like. No, that's not how families are. And what if we saw those terrible families that, you know, have a patriarch who's just an awful human who's just abusing the rest of the family? What if we saw that in a sitcom setting? And they're exploring that in this movie. And, you know, the whole movie is taking tropes from TV and flipping them upside down. The entire end of this movie takes place on the biggest day for television, Super Bowl Sunday. That's the day that everybody cares about in this world. That's usually when we get the highest rated program, which is the Super Bowl. And Robert Downey Jr., he plays a talk show host, almost in the sense like of 60 Minutes, you know, an interview show, and he's here to interview Mickey. You know, he's been documenting all the killings that he and his wife, Juliette Lewis, have been doing on the run. So now he's at the prison, and he's going to have his show be the lead-in after the Super Bowl, which always pops big ratings for television networks. So they're leaning right into that as well. So he's going to interview Mickey, and he's going to really, you know, be all for the victims and really try and condemn Mickey, but he doesn't give a shit. Robert Downey Jr.'s character, by the way, great Australian accent. One of the better Australian accents I've ever heard, just showing how good of an actor Robert Downey Jr. is.
Corporate predators, environmental predators, nuclear predators. Life is a hunt. I've seen it. I was there.
But he's just interviewing Mickey, like really leaning into him. Then the second the camera's cut, he's like, oh man, that was great, because he doesn't care about the victims. He doesn't care about Mickey. He doesn't care about anyone else but himself. And they're really exploring that in this movie. Then you get Tommy Lee Jones. Obviously, he's getting ready, getting his character together for Two-Face in 1995's Batman Forever, because he plays this character incredibly over the top.
I'm not supposed to know. Just get it. Do I have to do everything?
Not that everyone in this movie isn't playing their characters over the top. This whole movie is sold to you over the top. I mean, all the edits. There is the most amount of edits in a film to this point in 1994. Most films have 600 to 700 edits. This movie, I think, had over 3,000, took 11 months to edit, and had 2 editors on it. That's how hard this movie was to edit. And when you watch the movie, you can see it. We're cutting between sequences in black and white, neon green, regular color, distorting the image, all in just about, I don't know, a 1-minute shot. That's how much edits are in this movie. So it's really hard for you to get comfortable in this film, and that's what they were going for. The camera never sits down. There's numerous Dutch angles. So this movie doesn't want you to get comfortable. This movie is here to be chaotic, create that chaotic setting of the world of the early 1990s. And I really think Oliver Stone nailed what he was going for. Yes, everybody does a good job acting in this movie. They know exactly what kind of characters they're here to play. You don't like any of the leads, even the people who are hunting down Mickey and Mallory, played by Tom Sizemore, playing just, you know, his usual sleazy self in this movie.
Hey, Mickey, want a drink?
Of course, he wants to have sex with Mallory. Why wouldn't he? And he eventually meets his comeuppance as well, as do pretty much everybody in this movie. And the way Oliver Stone describes this movie is he was going for a love story. Was it a fucked up love story? Sure was, but these two characters really do love each other, and we try to understand what made these monsters what they are, but you still don't love them, and that's the message that they're trying to tell you in this movie is we put these serial killers on pedestals, but there are victims to their crimes, and that's what they're trying to show you in this movie, that there are real people affected by the crimes of these people that we put on pedestals.
You have children.
I mean, these are serial killers. They're monsters. You shouldn't care about these people because they do not care about you. And if it came down to it, they would blow your brains out. And they show that in this movie with Robert Downey Jr.'s character and how his connection is to Mickey and Mallory by the end of it. But what eventually happens? You'll have to find out when you check this movie out yourself. I enjoy the commentary more than anything. I enjoy the message of the movie more than anything than I actually enjoy the film. You know, the film is paced great because of all the phenomenal editing, but it's really hard to get behind any of these characters just because they are monsters. The score is done by Trent Reznor. It's great. It's a great score. All the licensed tracks in this movie do fit in perfectly. I just don't think it's the most entertaining movie. I don't think it's a movie I always rush back to. I will watch it every few years. I will enjoy it. I'll enjoy the message of it, and I'll always enjoy the fact that they were pretty much on the right track of what our world would become now. And if only they knew in 1994 what the world would be in 2023, it's almost like they called their shot and they just hit a home run, and we've just, you know, gotten more and more desensitized. But I really do love the message of this movie, and if you can appreciate it for that, you'll definitely get your enjoyment out of it. Just know that it kind of feels like an acid trip the entire time you're watching this movie, and it could be a little bit rough. It definitely leaves you uncomfortable in certain sequences, and you know, your mileage might vary on that. Are you going to be uncomfortable watching mass shootings and just outright down and dirty violence in this movie with characters who are just very, very unlikable? That's really going to come down to you. I just enjoy the message a little bit more than I actually enjoy the film itself, but it's still one that I can recommend you check out. And if you do want to check it out, maybe you want to check out this new Shout Factory 4K Blu-ray that we're going to talk about right now. Well, here it is, the Shout Select 4K Blu-ray. So this was released under the Shout Select brand, released by Shout Factory. And Shout Select, you know, they kind of put out, so Scream Factory puts out the horror films for them mainly. Shout Factory kind of puts out like their more mainstream stuff, while Shout Select is kind of keeping the old films alive. You know, earlier this year we got Rollerball on Shout Select. We've gotten The Last Detail on Shout Select. Natural Born Killers, at this point, almost 30 years old, is considered a cult classic film. It made about $110 million at the box office on a $34 million budget, so it was a hit at the time, so it does have its fans. Like I said in my film review, I enjoy this movie, and I really wanted to get the 4K Blu-ray, see what it looked like. The last time this was actually released on Blu-ray was in 2009, and it's funny because there's an introduction by Oliver Stone in front of the director's cut, but only on the Blu-ray for some reason, not on the 4K, and we'll talk about that in a second. But that was from 2009 as well, so really nothing has been done with this film since then, so it's really nice that we got a brand new 4K scan here from them. So we'll go inside, you know, you get the slipcover right here, which is really nice. Shout Select doesn't always have their films come out with slipcovers. I'd actually say Shout Select, for the most part, doesn't have their films come out with slipcovers. That's usually reserved for Scream Factory and Shout Factory regular in general. You could, same artwork underneath. It's not a reversible slipcover. You come inside, and it's a 3-disc set. So the first disc is a director's cut on 4K. The second disc is the director's cut on Blu-ray with some extras. And the third disc is the theatrical cut with extras on Blu-ray as well. It's very rare where you get the director's cut in 4K and the Blu-ray is the theatrical cut. But the reason is simple, because this movie, to get down to an R rating, they had to cut a lot of stuff, about 4 minutes worth of material, just to get it down to an R rating. So we're just adding that back into the director's cut. So it doesn't change the narrative of the film at all. So it's really just bringing it back. It's already a violent film, so it's just adding back in more violence and gore. So that's why the director's cut is in 4K. Would I have appreciated all these discs in 4K? Absolutely, but it's still pretty cool that we get the director's cut in 4K, and your first disc is gonna be that. It's just gonna be the film with a commentary track and your choice of audio, which is a DTS HD 5.1, but there's also a mono track, and you can listen to the commentary track while you watch the film as well. And then when you go to the second disc, it's just the Blu-ray of the director's cut. A bunch of new interviews, by the way. That's the new stuff that they're promoting as far as extras go, or you get some new interviews with the producer and the editor, so that's also really cool, because like I said, the editing in this movie is phenomenal, and to pick their brain, or one of the two editors' brains that is, to pick his brain about what he had to do for this movie, it's a really good interview. What I just find a little bit funny is that if you watch the director's cut of the 4K, which is the same exact cut as the Blu-ray, only the Blu-ray has the introduction from Oliver Stone, but the 4K doesn't. It's just very strange. It's a really good introduction. It's about 6 minutes long, and I think I recommend you guys actually check that out, even though if you're going to watch the 4K, go to the second disc and watch that introduction. Oliver Stone is one of my favorite interviews. I find him to be one of the most fascinating people. You know, he's a little bit, of a conspiracy theorist, but I always find him to be so intelligent, and the way he delivers his thoughts I find to be phenomenal. And he's one of the most interesting people ever. He's directed movies like Platoon and JFK that I just absolutely love. He's got a book that came out last year, really just exploring his life up to the Best Picture winner of Platoon. So Oliver Stone is definitely one of the more interesting people out there. So that introduction, I just absolutely love that. So I can honestly recommend you check out that intro. And then the third disc is the theatrical cut on Blu-ray, and that's where you'll find the rest of your extras, previously released featurettes that if you would have edited them together, it would have been a really good making of documentary that would have been about over an hour long. But instead you get 3 featurettes that are about 16 to 28 minutes long. All of them are really good. Those are my favorite kind of extras, exploring the making of the film. So you get a lot of good stuff in there. You get 6 deleted scenes, an alternate ending. Oliver Stone does an introduction for the alternate ending as well. I personally don't really love deleted scenes or alternate endings, just because if they're not going to be edited into the film, I don't want my views of the film to change. So I usually don't check that stuff out. I run them on the disc just to make sure they work, but I don't actually invest my emotions into them just because they were cut for a reason. That's always been my theory, is if it was cut and the director didn't want to include them and the editor didn't want to include them, then I feel like they were cut for a reason. And I also really like the original ending to this film. I think it fits what the tone of the movie is. So you do get plenty of extras. That's always what I ask for when it comes to new 4K Blu-rays. It includes some extras, but they really sprung for all the bells and whistles. You even get some new extras, which is rare in 2023. So I really do appreciate that. But what most people are here for is the visual upgrade. Definitely a big upgrade in my opinion, especially with the HDR10 and the Dolby Vision. When I was comparing the Blu-ray of the director's cut and the 4K of the director's cut, the director's cut of the 4K was much, much brighter, sharper than the Blu-ray. There's stuff in here because of the way it's edited that stuff looks distorted and grainy on purpose. They were going for that. But when you try and get into like the stuff where they're using regular cameras, when they're in that neon green pharmacy, like about halfway through the movie, that stuff just looks incredible on 4K, where on the Blu-ray it might look a little flat. So the 4K is definitely enhancing those scenes. It's enhancing, like very early in the movie, you're going to notice this in the diner with the key lime pie that's just going to pop off your screen now. They really cleaned up the 4K. It's a lot brighter, and I think they just did a phenomenal job on the visual transfer of this movie. I actually thought that the Dolby Vision and the HDR10 were very, very comparable. The Blu-ray is still really good on both the theatrical cut and the director's cut. I just think they did a really good job with the visuals on the 4K, that you're going to want to check it out in 4K, just because I really think it's a very noticeable upgrade in my opinion, especially over that previous 2009 Blu-ray. It's night and day when it comes to that. And then the audio is the DTS HD 5.1. You could also listen to it in a DTS HD 2.0. I recommend the 5.1. I think it does a great job. This movie has a score and a soundtrack running. There's plenty of sound effects, but everything is mixed very, very well. The dialogue is not too low. There's a lot of action and shooting in this movie, and that stuff isn't gonna blow you away because you have it set at a certain volume and then all of a sudden a shotgun goes off and now you're deaf. No, that doesn't happen in this movie. You could set it at a certain volume. Everything is mixed correctly, mixed perfectly. Would I have loved the Dolby Atmos track? Of course. If I always want the best of the best, but the DTS HD 5.1 track on here is really good. And honestly, overall, just everything that we get in here, all the bells and whistles, the great extras, the great 4K transfer. We get a slipcover. You could also buy this in a steelbook form from Best Buy, which I thought was pretty nice. I opted for the regular edition just because I like to have most of my Scream Factory stuff, try to look uniform on the shelf. And I really like the slipcover and the original poster design that they used for this film, so I kind of wanted this version myself personally, but you do have the option. So they really sprung for everything when it comes to this Shout Factory and under their Shout Select brand, which usually gets the bare bones treatment in comparison to Shout Factory and Scream Factory. But not here. We get 3 discs, and for the price point that it's at right now, and Shocktober's next month, so this more than likely will be on sale in a couple weeks during that sale on Shout Factory's website, as long as they're doing it again this year, and at that price, for this, would be an absolute steal. So I can highly recommend you grab Natural Born Killers on 4K Blu-ray, and if I was going to give this a score of 1 to 10, I would give it a pretty damn solid 9 out of 10. And anyway, guys, if you want to keep supporting the channel, you can actually grab this through my Amazon affiliate link, which I will leave in the description below. That costs no extra money to you, but I get a slight kickback from Amazon, and it really does help to support the channel. But if you really want to just keep supporting the channel, all you have to do is like this video, subscribe to the channel, get out in those streets, and tell your friends about us. And we'll be seeing you around.